A few years ago, I ran a writing workshop in Knoxville, Tennessee. If you don't know how these things go, I chat with a bunch of high schoolers over a long weekend. Then they take a stab at writing a fiction piece, using the advice I had to give. The advice piece is tough for me. Most of these kids, they're looking for a secret, a tidbit of magic wisdom that will turn them into an Oscar winner or something. I don't have advice like that. No one does. A whole lot of being a good writer is figuring it out for yourself. But sometimes, rarely, I come across a student who already has. That happened in Knoxville. After a lecture, I took the kids writing samples to my hotel, read through the stack, writing notes here, encouragements there, finding a balance between thickening their skin with appropriate critiques and being supportive. But then, I got to this one story. It was about a monster, a wretched ancient one, that the Cherokee people once warned their nearest and dearest about. This creature, this witch, lurked in the great Smoky Mountains, in the wilderness, and preyed on children who got lost there. She was a true abomination with stone skin and a black talon that she used to slice. I'm getting ahead of myself. This story kept me up that night, because it scared the you-know-what out of me. But also, it was so specific and vivid. This kid didn't need thick skin, not if he could write like this. I couldn't wait to talk to the author and shake his hand. His name was Charlie. When I asked him to stay after my lecture the next day, he looked on guard. I thought he'd relax when I gave him a heap of praise about his story. But he didn't. He just stared at me, giving nothing away. Then he said he was sorry. He didn't actually do the assignment. He was supposed to write a fictional story, but he wrote a real one. You're listening to Run, Fool! I'm Rodney Barnes, and this is episode 63, Spearfinger. Charlie's story started 4 years ago when he was 12. And just to give you the lay of the land, he didn't live in Knoxville proper. His hometown was about a 30-minute drive outside, in the shadow of the Great Smoky Mountains. It was a small place, cute, quaint, all that. Not a lot of kids were Charlie's age, and he didn't have any siblings. But none of that mattered to Charlie, because his mom was his best friend in the world. That might seem kind of pitiful, but not to Charlie. The kid loved his mom, and they did just about everything together. Baked, rode their bikes, wrote stories. He'd come to his mom with every problem, no matter how small, and she'd fix it, just like that. She was magic. Of course he loved his dad too, but it wasn't the same, and I'll leave it at that. There was a problem with all this that Charlie didn't understand yet. See, Charlie relied on his mom for just about everything, telling him what to do, how to feel. Without her, he was an open, raw wound, with nothing to protect him. And one summer, Charlie found this out the hard way, when a terrible, terrible thing happened. His mom got a new job. She'd always been a writer, but had taken time off to raise Charlie. Now that he was almost in high school, she seemed to think it was time to go back to the workforce, as a journalist for the local paper. Suddenly, his mom didn't have time for Charlie. When they watched their nightly movie, she was so tired. She always fell asleep. She rushed through breakfast in the mornings, and she forgot to pick him up from school sometimes. When that happened, he'd walk home, and the other kids would follow him, calling him a weirdo, a wuss. They roughed him up a few times, all because he was quiet and nervous. You know, kids are jerks. Basically, his mom's new job was a crisis, and it really pissed him off. From my perspective, he was probably scared too. that being a kid was coming to an end, and he wasn't ready for adulthood yet. He didn't have thick enough skin to make it through the world unscathed, not without his mom. So yeah, being scared and mad, that's a cocktail that makes us do dumb things, especially when you're a 12-year-old kid. I say that so you'll understand why Charlie did what he did next. He decided to run away. Of course, he wasn't really gonna run away. He was just gonna go into the woods with a sleeping bag, not too far, just inside, and stay there till morning. That'd give his mom enough time to realize he was missing. She'd be so worried. He was sure she'd quit her job and go back to being Charlie's best friend and protector. But Charlie's big plan got messed up pretty fast. He walked into the woods with a sleeping bag, some food. Who are we kidding? A bunch of candy, and a flashlight. He'd only been walking for about 10 minutes when he realized he was lost. All the trees looked the same. The sunlight barely broke through their thick canopies. It was summer, so it was supposed to be hot, but there was so much leaf cover that the shaded forest was cold. He rubbed his arms, wishing he'd worn long sleeves, or brought a sweatshirt, or his cell phone. His mom could see his location with that thing, so he thought he was being smart by leaving it. Now he realized he'd been very dumb. He felt nauseous because the more he walked, the harder it got to figure out where he was. There was no sign of life, not even a deer or squirrel. The shadows among the trees seemed to get thicker, and he realized, with a jolt of terror, that the sun was setting. He didn't have long before it was dark. He swallowed, his mouth was all dry, because even though he'd planned on spending the night in the woods, he'd also planned on knowing where the hell he was, and how to get home if he decided to bail. Now, he was stuck. He heard a stick crack behind him. He whipped around, but all he saw were trees. He glanced down at the forest floor, the moss and leaves that covered the ground. He listened, waiting for another sound. None came. He was just about to relax when he heard something that made every single hair on his body stand right up. Someone was singing. Not the good kind of song, the creepy kind. A soft, haunting lullaby. And what's worse, Charlie recognized the melody. It was a song his mom used to sing to him when he was little. It wasn't a common tune either. His mom had made it up. It was something just the two of them shared. Now, it was here, in the woods, being uttered by someone that he couldn't see. Charlie looked this way and that, trying to figure out where the song was coming from. This got harder when it suddenly stopped, leaving him in silence once again. The quiet felt so complete. It gave Charlie a bad feeling in his stomach. It was like the trees were creating some kind of soundproof cage around him, and he was worried. It wouldn't let him go. Then Charlie caught a glimpse of a certain tree, about 10 yards away. Its trunk was partially concealed by two large bushes with spindly arm-like branches that reached into the air around it, and peering through that shrubbery was a nightmare. It seemed to be a woman, and whoever it was partially obscured by leaves and branches. She was far away too, but Charlie saw enough to be very, very afraid. She had stringy matted hair and violently black bottomless eyes. But it was her skin that really worried Charlie, because it looked rough and gray, like the surface of a boulder. Even from a distance he could tell that woman was made of stone. And listen, for a second, he was sure she actually was. That he stumbled upon some statue in the middle of the woods, which made him feel better, because that would mean civilization was close by. But then, she was gone, vanished. Nothing to indicate she'd ever been there at all, except for a branch that quivered just above where her face had been. It was that quiver. That's what told Charlie he hadn't imagined it. that she'd been real. Now, she was nowhere to be seen, and yeah, not knowing where she was, that didn't feel good. So Charlie started walking in the other direction. The whole time he kept his eyes peeled for that otherworldly woman who'd watched him from the thicket. Eventually, though, doing that got harder, because it was getting really dark. Night had arrived. Charlie eventually stopped panting. He took out the flashlight he'd packed and waved it around. As he did, he tripped over a root and plunged to the ground, hitting his knee on a rock. He cried out, shined the light on the spot. His pants were ripped up, exposing his skin, and a bloom of blood where the ground scraped him. Charlie couldn't navigate these woods in the dark. He might as well try and make camp, which he didn't know how to do. He'd camped with his mom before, but she always set everything up, made it nice, so that Charlie could feel safe. He missed that. Once again, it occurred to him that without his mom, he was exposed. A turtle without a shell. As Charlie mulled all this over, an ethereal melody drifted through the woods. That lullaby again. His veins turned to ice and his stomach clenched. He waved his flashlight around, but it just hit trees and leaves and nothing. No woman. Another sound infiltrated the forest. Laughter. The high-pitched cackling kind. Your classic witch's laugh. Full of contempt and a whiff of hunger. Charlie didn't know who this woman was, what she wanted, but hearing that laugh filled him with a deep understanding that this woman was telling him something. She was watching, and it was only a matter of time before she struck. And this revelation, well, it made Charlie run. He sprinted through the dark, waving his flashlight in front of him. The beam shook roughly from his movement, making him so dizzy he had to stop and lean against a tree. Head swimming, stomach rolling. He tried to calm down. He told himself he just had to make it through the night. His mom would come looking for him. Someone would find him in the morning. He just had to make it through the night. But how? His mom wasn't there. He had no idea how to survive. He was so screwed. Terror immobilized him for a few minutes, until he snapped out of it, reached for a sleeping bag, his only armor. He laid it out, crawled inside, turned off his flashlight. His breath was louder than he'd like. He felt weak and wobbly from all the running and the fear. He closed his eyes and tried not to think about that woman and how she was out there, somewhere, in the shadows. He wished again that his mom was there. He wondered if she was looking for him, or if she'd been too busy with work to notice he was gone. He'd like to think she was somewhere in the woods, calling his name, that she missed him, wanted him home. This image was powerful, so powerful he could almost hear his mom's voice, yelling for him in the deep recesses of the woods. Wait, that was his mom, calling to him. Charlie sat up. The voice kept echoing around, reverberating through the thick forest. He gasped and leapt out of his sleeping bag. She'd come for him after all. He screamed, telling her he was there. He was there. He could hear her footsteps pound the forest floor. She was running towards him. His heart swelled. He knew it. She'd found him. He turned on his flashlight and waved it through the night. He could see his mom coming for him. Far in the distance, between the trees, she was running. No, galloping. It looked like she was hunched over, using her hands to beat at the forest floor, along with her feet. It was a bizarre way to run. He'd never seen anything like it. It looked wrong. His mom sped up and unfurled her body until she ran upright. As she did, Charlie realized something important. The woman careening towards him was not his mom. Let me tell you, if there's a surefire way to wake up feeling fresh after a night of drinking, it's with pre-alcohol. Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by a PhD scientist to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Every time I have pre-alcohol before drinks, I notice a difference the next day. Even after a night out, I can confidently plan on not having road rage. When I'm stuck in traffic on the 405 after a rough night and I'm all tensed up, but because I had my pre-alcohol, I can let people have their blinker on. I'm not running people off and trying to scooch up a little bit so they can't get in. It's that pre-alcohol that's making me a kinder, gentler person after a night out on the town. This March Madness, don't let anything sideline your celebrations. Grab pre-alcohol before you go out and be ready to cheer on your team all day and all night long. Go to zbiotics.com/run to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use RUN at checkout. Z-Biotics is back with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/run and use the code RUN at checkout for 15% off.
Will you rise with the sun to help change mental health care forever? Join the Sunrise Challenge to raise funds for CAMH, the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, to support life-saving progress in mental health care. From May 26th to 30th, Canadians will rise as one and show those living with mental illness and addiction that they're not alone. Help CAMH build a future where no one is left behind. So, who will you rise for? Register today at sunrisechallenge.ca. That's sunrisechallenge.ca.
The woman with the stone face and black eyes. She wore a long gray robe which billowed out behind her, made her look like she was made of clouds. One hand, her right, was shoved into the fabric of her garb, while the other was stretched out in front of her, reaching for Charlie. It was one of the most fascinating and horrific things the 12-year-old had ever seen. He watched as the stone woman barreled closer. A tree was in her way, but rather than dodge it, she shoved it to the side. Charlie screamed as the tree snapped in two, because that lady just pushed over a thick, hardy oak, like she was some kind of deforestation machine, and she was still coming. It occurred to Charlie he needed to move, rather than watch this homicidal fiend run him over. As soon as this thought occurred to him, he jumped to the side, just as she flew by him. He could feel the air ripple as she rushed straight through the spot he'd been standing. The thing was, she kept running. Her feet stomped through the forest, shaking the ground, jostling leaves from their branches. The foliage rained down around Charlie. He heard a deafening clap as she shoved another tree over. Then it got quiet again. Charlie had no idea why she'd run off. He'd been so sure she wanted to kill him. But the why of it all? Well, thinking about that was a fool's errand, and Charlie knew it. The only thing that mattered now, getting out of these woods and away from her. He took off in the other direction, stumbling around the darkness. But then he realized it shouldn't be dark. Oh, his flashlight. He must have dropped it when he ran. He stopped short. The inky night around him was so dense. He imagined the woman lurking in the shadows, waiting to pounce. So he kept moving, striding through the dark wilderness at a quick clip, hands stretched out in front of him, shoving aside brush and forest debris, and flesh and blood. Yeah, his hands connected with an actual person, someone's arm. Fear shot through him. But then the person said,
"Charlie."
And he was so relieved he burst into tears. It was his mother. Even without the flashlight, he could tell it was actually her this time. The moon faintly leaked through the trees, giving him a sliver of light. He could see her hair thrown up in a bun, that oversized jacket she always wore. Her brow was furrowed, her classic worried expression that was reserved for Charlie, and Charlie alone. He threw his arms around her and sobbed. She stroked his hair, saying it was okay. She was there to protect him. He was safe. She'd never let him go again. After a moment, his mom pulled away and said they couldn't find their way out of there tonight. It was too dark. They should go somewhere, camp out, wait until morning. Charlie nodded. He didn't have to make decisions anymore. His mom was here. She led him through the woods, over stones and logs, up an incline. They were heading deeper into the mountains. But Charlie didn't notice. He was busy listening to his mom. She'd been saying all these great things, everything he'd been wanting her to say, about how worried she'd been. She was going to quit her job and spend all her time with Charlie, because he was still young and sensitive. Charlie basked in the sound of her voice. He wasn't even bothered by the woods anymore. He was just glad to be on an adventure with her. Then she stopped. Charlie looked ahead. They were standing in front of a small cave cut into a rocky outcrop at the base of a mountain. His mom gestured towards it, said she'd found shelter. They should go inside. Charlie nodded, and the two stepped into the dark, cool opening. Charlie couldn't see much. He just felt his mom guide him to the dusty floor. She suggested he get some rest. They still had a long night ahead of them, after all. Charlie moved some of the rocks on the ground aside so he could lie down while his mom gathered wood around the cave and made a fire. Once the flames crackled, she came over and stroked his hair, sang that lullaby. This time it was literally music to his ears. The song, the warmth, and his mom's touch. It was heaven. His eyelids grew heavy. As he drifted off, he felt so safe. He didn't have to be strong or be an adult. All he had to do was let his mom protect him, and everything would be okay. After a few moments, sleep took him. It didn't last long. Seconds after he closed his eyes, while he was teetering in that subliminal space between sleep and consciousness, he felt something. At first, he thought it was just a rock he'd rolled over. But then it started to hurt, really hurt. The pain was so searing his eyes shot open, and he cried out. Standing above him, where his mother had been moments ago, was the stone woman. The flames cast a dancing light onto her rocky face, locked in an expression of glee. Her black eyes glistened. Her lips were too red and moist, like they were dripping with blood. They spread into a smile as she held up a knife, except she wasn't holding the knife. It was attached to her right hand. Her actual index finger was a sharp obsidian weapon. That's when Charlie looked down and saw where the pain had come from. She'd slit his stomach open.
What's better than a well-marbled ribeye sizzling on the barbecue? A well-marbled ribeye sizzling on the barbecue that was carefully selected by an Instacart shopper and delivered to your door. A well-marbled ribeye you ordered without even leaving the kiddie pool. Whatever groceries your summer calls for, Instacart has you covered. Download the Instacart app and enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 orders. Service fees, exclusions, and terms apply. Instacart. Groceries that over-deliver.
Or she started to. There was a deep wound on his upper right torso, like she'd stuck that sharp, sinister finger in, but hadn't gotten a chance to completely open him up. Charlie guessed she hadn't expected him to wake so easily. The finger knife dripped with blood as the two stared at one another, each waiting for the other to make a move. Then, the witch croaked out, saying she made a mistake. She usually goes for the heart first, to make sure her dinner is good and dead. Then, she gets the liver, her favorite part. But she was so hungry. It had been so long since she last fed. She just couldn't wait. As she spoke, her eyes flashed with ravenous urgency. It chilled Charlie to his core. He was frozen. Not only was he staring at this horror show in a cave in the middle of nowhere, He didn't have his mom. He was the only person who could save him, and he didn't think he was up to the task. So, he just screamed and tried to crawl away. As he did, he felt the woman's iron-like grip on his shirt, pulling him back. He reached out in panic, and in doing so, grabbed a rock from the cave floor. His eyes lit up. A weapon. He immediately whipped around and hooked it. The stone soared through the air, arcing, before it smashed into the side of the witch's face. And she didn't move. The rock didn't make a dent in her facial armor. It didn't even make her flinch. She let out a high-pitched laugh, then leaned forward and whispered in a low, hurried voice that he recognized as his mother's, only now was filled with rancor. She called Charlie a coward, a loser, a kid who needed positive reinforcement or a helping hand every second. He was never going to be able to get through life. Charlie sobbed. It hurt to hear his mother's voice saying all that. But the other thing that broke his heart, it was all true. The stone witch brandished her spearfinger. Charlie was about to close his eyes and wait for it to be over. But then he saw something. The palm of her right hand, the one that had the knife finger. It was mushy and reddish. It was also throbbing. It looked like a heart. Now look, this is me talking. But there was some synergy going on here. Because Charlie was basically a fragile heart himself, with no armor to speak of, which meant he knew precisely how delicate an exposed organ can be. And what's funny is, it took Charlie seeing that thing to realize weak things die. And because of that, he needed to toughen the hell up. Before he could talk himself out of it, he lunged for another rock, grabbed the witch's wrist, and slammed the stone into her palm. The woman let out an ear-piercing scream. Blood poured from her hand as Charlie smashed the rock into it again and again and again. Her blood hit his face. Its warm metallic taste splashed into his mouth, but he didn't stop. Not until the witch lay still. By the fire, her stone face locked in an expression of horror. He dropped the rock, then stepped back, let out a breath, but he didn't cry, not this time. 'Cause yeah, vulnerable people don't survive in this world. And from that point on, Charlie was determined not to be one of them. He left the cave then and there, just as daylight broke. I handed Charlie his paper, watched him stare at the excellent job I had written at the top. He softly added that he'd walked out of the woods after killing the witch, just kind of trusted he'd find his way, instead of worrying that he wouldn't. When he looked up at me, he said that experience had changed him, for better or for worse. He wasn't scared of much these days. He didn't feel much of anything, actually. I stared at him, this kid, he'd gone through hell and back. And sure, it wasn't right that he felt too exposed in the world without his mom. But it wasn't right that he'd gone numb either. I wondered if he'd ever find a balance between wearing his heart on his sleeve and donning an impenetrable coat of armor each day. I didn't say any of that, because I've learned from my workshops and from life that there's no magic advice you can give to someone that'll change them. Charlie would figure it out when he was ready. Instead, I told him it was a great story again. He thanked me and turned to leave, but before he did, he stopped. Back still facing me, he said he didn't presume to tell me what to do, but he'd recommend I stay away from the Smoky Mountains and the forest around it, because he just had this bad feeling that this world hadn't seen the last of the woman with a spearfinger. That was the end of the story, but I'm not done with you yet. Wondering what happened next? That stays between the Run Fool community and me. If you're not too scared to join us, head over to joinrunfool.com today. That's JOINRUNFOOL.com. You can sign up for longer, scarier episodes ad-free listening, and exclusive Ask Me Anything sessions. Sign up now at joinrunfool.com. Don't walk. Run, fool!